They kicked me out with $50. 5 years later, they're ringing the doorbell of my Atlantic villa on Thanksgiving. My father holds out his hand. Give us the keys. But my grandfather told me I only needed one key. The others, he said, were locked by family secrets, hidden inside a lawyer's sealed envelope. My name is Kendall Scott. I am 26 years old, and I live in a city, Savannah, that smells of salt and gardenias. A thick, sweet humidity that's the exact opposite of the dry, dusty attic of my childhood home in Des Moines. The air in Iowa was thin. It carried the scent of cut grass and, in winter, the sterile bite of snow. Here, the air is heavy. It sticks to you. It reminds you that you are breathing. For the first 3 years in Savannah, I lived in a single room over a garage that perpetually smelled of engine oil and mildew. My only real piece of furniture was an Army surplus cot. It was made of olive drab canvas and a frame of thin, hollow aluminum. When I unfolded it at night, the joint snapped into place with a sharp, metallic clack. That sound became the soundtrack to my life. Clack, you are temporary. Clack, you are replaceable. Clack, you have nowhere else to go. 5 years ago, when I was 21, my parents made that fact explicitly clear. It wasn't a dramatic fight. There was no shouting, no slammed doors. That would have required passion. And passion was something my mother, Valerie, and my father, Gregory, reserved exclusively for my older sister, Tessa. It was a Tuesday in October. Tessa had just received an early acceptance to a graduate program she hadn't even paid the application fee for. Gregory had handled it. I, meanwhile, had just admitted I couldn't balance my final semester's tuition and my part-time job. I suggested, quietly, that perhaps I could use the college fund I knew existed. Valerie set her coffee cup down. The ceramic made a tiny, decisive click on the granite countertop. "Kendall," she said, her voice perfectly smooth. "Your father and I feel you've been drifting. You lack Tessa's focus." Gregory cleared his throat, his signal that the decision had been made. "Tessa's path is an investment. Yours," he looked at my worn sneakers, "is a cost. We aren't going to subsidize a lack of direction." I remember the silence, how it filled the kitchen, thick and choking. I waited for one of them to blink, to offer an alternative, a loan, anything. Instead, my father reached for his wallet. He didn't pull out a credit card or a checkbook. He extracted 2 $20 bills and one $10 bill, $50. He laid them on the counter, next to a crumb from breakfast. "It's time you learned to manage on your own," he said. My mother smiled, a tight, supportive little nod aimed at my father. "This is for the best. Kendall, responsibility is the making of a person." Tessa was upstairs, probably sleeping. She wasn't part of this. She never had to be. I looked at the $50. It wasn't just money. It was a price tag. It was my exact worth to them. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I went to my room, the one in the attic with the slanted ceiling, and packed a single, worn suitcase. I took the $50. I walked to the Des Moines bus station, and I bought a one-way ticket to the furthest place that money would take me. It was Savannah, Georgia. My first home here was that garage room, and my first symbol of ownership was the cot. Clack. My first job was at the bus terminal, the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. I wasn't a cleaner. I wasn't security. I was a flow monitor, a title invented by a regional manager who had read a business book. My job was to sit in a small, glass-walled booth with a clipboard and a clicker, logging the number of passengers, where they were going, and what time the surges hit. I was a ghost in a box, watching other ghosts pass through. The air smelled of diesel fumes, stale coffee, and unwashed bodies. I watched the 2:30 a.m. bus from Atlanta always arrive 20 minutes late, spilling out tired soldiers and people running from something. I watched the 5:15 a.m. commuter surge, a wave of nurses, construction workers, and cooks, all gray-faced under the fluorescent lights. At first, I just clicked the counter. Click, 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 but after a few weeks, the boredom was eclipsed by something else, a curiosity, I wasn't just seeing people, I was seeing a system, a predictable, flawed, living system. The woman who owned the garage apartment was Nora Pike. She was in her late 60s, with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun and hands permanently stained with furniture polish from the antique shop she ran downstairs. She was not kind, but she was meticulously fair. When I first met her, I tried to give her the $50 I had left as a deposit. She pushed my hand away. "Rent is due on the 1st. In full, $180. Deposit is $180. You're short. I get paid in 2 weeks," I said, my voice trembling. "I can give you this now, and the rest then." Nora stared at me for a long moment. Then she went to her desk and pulled out a heavy leather-bound ledger. She opened it. The pages were filled with neat, severe columns. "I don't do partials," she said. "I don't do promises. I do ledgers. You pay first. I log it. At the end of the month, the numbers match. That's the principle. You can't meet the principle. You can't have the room." "Please," I whispered. "I have nowhere else." She sighed, not with pity, but with irritation. "You have 1 week. Get a paycheck advance. Sell something. I don't care. 1 week. If you're not back with $360, I give the room to the next person. And don't," she added, pointing a finger at me, "make me chase you for it." I got the advance. It cost me an extra fee, but I was back in 6 days. I counted the money into her hand. She counted it again. Then, she took out a pen and made an entry in her ledger. "Kendall Scott, paid in full, October 1st. She handed me a key. "Principle met. Don't be late next month." Nora Pike taught me my first real lesson in business pay first. Log it, match it. I took that lesson back to my booth at the bus station. I went to a dollar store and bought a 24-pack of colored pens and a notebook, a thick one, with graph paper. I stopped just clicking. I started logging. I assigned colors. Red for the late Atlanta bus. Blue for the 5:15 a.m. commuter surge. Green for the Jacksonville line, which was always half empty. I drew charts. I mapped the passenger flow by the hour, overlaying it with the scheduled arrivals and the actual arrivals, and I saw it. The patterns, invisible to everyone else. I saw that the Atlanta bus was late because it was scheduled only 10 minutes after a major shift change at a factory near its last stop. I saw that the commuter surge at 5:15 a.m. created a bottleneck at the single ticket counter, causing an average delay of 12 minutes, which then cascaded, making the 5:40 a.m. bus late. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was an analyst. I was, in my own small way, mastering the system that contained me, my family. Meanwhile, remained a frozen, distant object. The $50 was the last communication I'd had from them. I didn't call. They didn't call. The silence was absolute, until the following spring. My phone buzzed on my cot. A text from a number I didn't recognize, but my heart knew instantly it was Valerie. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Maybe she was sorry. Maybe she was worried. The message read, "Happy birthday to my wonderful Tessa. She got the internship." It took me a moment to understand. She had texted me, Kendall, by mistake, on my sister's birthday, not mine. My birthday had passed 2 months earlier, unmentioned. I stared at the text for a long time, then I typed one word, wrong number. I hit send. I turned the phone off. I went to the terminal and picked up an extra shift, charting the flow of cargo, not just people. A few months later, I saw them. Tessa had posted pictures, a huge party for her internship. My father, Gregory, was beaming, his arm around her. My mother, Valerie, was holding a champagne flute, smiling that same tight, proud smile. They looked happy. They looked complete. I closed the app. The cot clacked as I sat on it. Temporary, replaceable. I was working too much. I knew it. Double shifts, triples. I was saving every penny. Building a column in my own cheap notebook that I labeled Escape. Escape from the cot, from the smell of diesel, from the memory of that $50 bill. One night, it caught up to me. A Tuesday, just like the day I left. Rain was hammering the tin roof of the station, a deafening drum. I was walking back from the break room, my head swimming. The numbers from my charts were blurring in my vision. Red lines, blue lines. I didn't feel myself fall. I just felt the sudden, shocking cold of the concrete floor against my cheek. I heard a woman shriek. I smelled wet asphalt and something metallic, like old pennies. When I woke up, an EMT was shining a bright, painful light in my eyes. "Ma'am, can you hear me? You collapsed. Exhaustion and dehydration. Looks like..." They gave me an IV bag of saline, right there in the terminal's first aid room. They wanted to take me to the hospital. I refused. A hospital meant a bill I couldn't pay. They made me sign a waiver. A week later, the bill came anyway. From the ambulance company, $68.40. I stared at it. It was more than the $50 my parents had given me to disappear. This was the cost of my survival. The price of having no one to call. No safety net to catch me. This piece of paper, this stupid, arbitrary number, was the cost of being alone. That was the end, not the collapse, the bill. I sat on my cot, holding the invoice. I could hear the clack of the joints, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking. Systems, patterns, Nora Pike's ledger. The bus station's flaws. The bus station was a bad system. My family was a bad system. I was trapped in both. I paid the $68.40 bill. It almost wiped out my escape fund. The next day, I walked into the hiring office of a local logistics company called Turnpike Ridge. It was a dusty, chaotic warehouse on the edge of town. I walked up to the supervisor. "I want a job," I said. "We're not hiring office staff." He grunted, not looking up. "I don't want an office job," I said. "I want to work in the warehouse. I want to learn how your freight moves." He looked up, surprised. He saw a skinny, tired-looking young woman. "It's heavy work. I'm stronger than I look," I said. I was hired as a part-time associate. Evening shift. My new job was scanning and sorting boxes. It was brutal, physical labor. But every night, after my shift, I didn't go straight home. I went to the break room and I read. I read the employee handbook. I read the safety manuals. I read the shipping manifests and the trucking contracts I found left on clipboards. I was learning the language of a new, much bigger system, a system of trucks and manifests and supply chains. That night, I went home to my garage room. I was sore in muscles I didn't know I had. I pulled the cot open. Clack, I smiled. The sound was different now. It was no longer an ending. It was a countdown. It was the sound of a spring coiling, of a mechanism engaging. It was the first clack of the clock, counting down the days until I left that cot and that room behind for good. The work at Turnpike Ridge was harder than the bus station, but it was honest. The bus station was about watching failure. The warehouse was about causing it. My job was to scan, lift, and sort boxes onto pallets. But the real problem, I saw within a week, wasn't the boxes, it was the paperwork. The manifests were handwritten, smudged, and often wrong. The data entry was done by a rotating shift of drivers and floor managers on a single, beige computer in a dusty corner. It was a 1990s machine running a system I didn't recognize, but I saw, hidden in a folder, a copy of Microsoft Excel. While others took their 15-minute smoke breaks, I sat at that keyboard while they ate lunch in their trucks. I Googled tutorials on my phone. I taught myself to write a macro. It was simple, ugly code. It just automated the data entry from the manifests, cross-referencing the truck ID with the bay number. But it did something else. It highlighted discrepancies in red. It flagged the boxes that were supposed to be on the truck but weren't scanned, and the boxes that were scanned but weren't on the manifest. The data entry, which took the shift managers 3 hours of guesswork and corrections, I condensed into 45 minutes of verification. The macro saved, on average, 2 hours per shift. I didn't tell anyone. I just ran it at the end of my own shift. After a week, the night supervisor, Raylan Cole, called me into his glass box office. Raylan was a man carved from packing crates. He was hard angles, rough surfaces, and smelled faintly of diesel and cardboard dust. He was not a mentor, he was a force of inertia. He believed logistics was about strong backs and fast scanners, not spreadsheets. He squinted at me, then at a printout on his desk. "Your shift," he said, his voice like gravel in a chute. "It's too clean." "Sir, your manifests, 0 discrepancies for 3 nights running. The day shift looks like a bomb went off." "Your shift looks like a library. Nobody's that good." "Scott, what are you doing?" I explained the macro. I used words like automate and cross-reference. His eyes glazed over. He hated it. He hated it because he didn't understand it. And he hated it because it suggested the problem wasn't lazy workers, but a bad system. "Right," he said, tearing the printout in half. "A computer genius. We'll see about that." The test came the next night. It was chaos. Usually. Trucks were staggered. Tonight, Raylan had personally rerouted the schedule. At exactly 8 p.m., 4 major client trucks arrived simultaneously. One was refrigerated goods for a grocery chain, one was fragile electronics, one was bulk chemicals, one was a mixed-load nightmare from a distribution center that never palletized correctly, and they all needed to go out on new routes in 90 minutes. The yard crew panicked. The forklifts were buzzing in circles. Raylan stood on the loading dock, arms crossed, watching me. He was waiting for my macro to save me. I looked at the computer. It was useless. The computer could log the failure after it happened, but it couldn't solve the immediate, physical gridlock. I looked around. I needed a map. I grabbed a discarded slip sheet, a giant, flat piece of cardboard used to separate pallets. I found a thick black Sharpie in a tool bin. I dropped to one knee on the concrete floor, in the middle of the chaos, and I started to draw. I didn't draw a spreadsheet. I drew the loading dock, 4 bays, 3 staging areas. I drew boxes and arrows. I wasn't optimizing data. I was optimizing the physical space. I stood up, holding my poverty map, and started shouting, "Raylan." He looked over, annoyed. "The reefer truck can't wait," I yelled over the engine noise. "Put it in Bay 1, but only unload the first 4 pallets. That's the priority order for the outbound. Stack them in staging area A. Get the mixed load truck into Bay 3. We're not unloading it. We're sorting it on the truck and moving the priority freight directly to the electronics truck waiting in Bay 4. The chemical truck waits. It's the only one that's not temperature sensitive or going out immediately." I was channeling the flow, just like at the bus station. Red lines and blue lines, but now they were forklifts and pallets. Raylan stared at me. He looked at my map. He looked at the chaos. He grunted. "You heard her. Move Bay 1, reefer Bay 3, mixed load Scott. You're on the manifest for the mix. Make it work." For 90 minutes, I lived inside the system I had drawn on the cardboard. It was loud, heavy, and dangerous. But it worked. The routes went out. We missed the deadline by only 10 minutes, instead of 2 hours. As the last truck pulled away, I was leaning against a stack of empty pallets, breathing in diesel fumes, covered in grime. One of the drivers, a woman named Ivy Hale, stopped by. She was older, with a kind, weathered face. She'd been watching me all night from her cab. She nodded toward the Sharpie still in my hand. "You read the flow," she said. I was too tired to explain. "No," she said, cutting me off gently. "Raylan sees boxes. The new kids see scanners. You see the flow. Keep doing that." Ivy was the first person at Turnpike Ridge to speak to me like I was a person, not a pair of hands. She became my first, and only, friend there. Raylan Cole never mentioned the cardboard map. He never praised me for saving the shift. But the next day, a memo went up. I was no longer on scanner duty. I was promoted, if you could call it that, to exceptions coordinator. It was a lateral move in pay, but a vertical leap in responsibility. It meant Raylan was giving me all the problems his supervisors couldn't solve. I was officially in charge of the company's mistakes. I went back to my graph paper notebook. I started logging the exceptions. I saw the same patterns I'd seen on the loading dock. Slow paperwork from specific vendors, mixed pallets from specific distributors. The biggest bottleneck was the 7 p.m. inbound rush. Everyone arrived at once, just like Raylan's test. The manifests were slow, and the clean loads got stuck behind the messy ones. I wrote a one-page proposal. I used Nora Pike's language, principle separate clean from complex. I proposed that Bay 4, which was underused, become a priority inbound door for any driver whose paperwork was digitally pre-cleared by me. I handed the paper to Raylan. He read it, grunted, and stuck it on the bulletin board with a thumbtack. The next week, it was implemented. The results were immediate. The 7 p.m. clog vanished. The average yard time, the time a truck spent waiting, dropped by 11%. Raylan didn't say thank you. He walked over to my desk, which was just a forklift pallet I'd flipped on its side, and dropped a new file. "Fine," he said. "You fixed the yard. Now go fix a customer." This was my first real project, Salt and Vine, a local, rapidly expanding donut chain. They were our biggest new client, and they were furious. "They're missing their flour," Raylan said. "Every morning, we deliver it. They say it's too late. Fix it." I went to the main Salt and Vine shop at 4 a.m. I sat in the parking lot and watched. This was the bus station all over again. At 4:15 a.m., the Turnpike refrigerated truck arrived. It delivered cream, milk, and coffee beans. At 4:30 a.m., the bakers arrived. They unlocked the doors, fired up the ovens, and waited. At 5:10 a.m., the Turnpike dry goods truck arrived. It delivered flour, sugar, and boxes. By then, the bakers were 40 minutes behind schedule. The first commuter rush for coffee and donuts started at 6 a.m. The shelves were empty. I looked at the routes. The dry truck flour had a long, winding route, hitting 3 other clients before the donut shop. The refrigerated truck coffee had a short, direct route. The solution was blindingly simple. I went back to Raylan. "Swap the routes," I said. "What?" "Give the dry truck the refrigerated truck's route. Give the refrigerated truck the dry truck's route. The dry truck is the priority. The flour has to get there before the coffee," Raylan argued. "The cold chain, the driver schedules." "The refrigerated truck is empty by the time it gets to its last stop," I countered. "The new route is shorter. It doesn't affect the cold chain, and the dry truck driver's new route is only 15 minutes longer. I already spoke to him. He doesn't care." Raylan hated that I'd spoken to a driver, but he hated the angry phone calls from Salt and Vine more. He approved it. I called my new route the 4:40 a.m. loop. The next morning, I was there. At 4:15 a.m., the dry truck flour arrived. At 4:30 a.m., the bakers arrived and immediately started mixing. At 4:40 a.m., the refrigerated truck coffee arrived. At 6 a.m., when the doors opened, the shelves were full. 2 days later, Raylan dropped an envelope on my pallet desk. It was thick, creamy cardstock, a formal business letter. It was from the owner of Salt and Vine. It was a thank you letter. It praised the profound operational efficiency and the intuitive understanding of their needs. It was addressed not to Turnpike Ridge, not to Raylan Cole, but personally to me, to Ms. Kendall Scott. I held it. It was the first time in my life someone had thanked me for my competence. It was the opposite of the $50 bill. It wasn't a dismissal. It was an acknowledgement. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I was saving money. I had moved from the garage apartment to a small, one-bedroom unit with actual walls. I still had the cot. I kept it folded in the closet, a reminder. But I was finally sleeping in a real bed. I was at my desk, sketching out a new loading system for a carpet warehouse. When my phone rang, it was an unknown number. Georgia area code. I almost ignored it. Probably a sales call. But something made me pick up. "This is Kendall." The voice on the other end was old. It was dry, like old paper, but it had a surprising strength, a resonance. "Is this Kendall Scott, Valerie Scott's daughter?" I froze. My mother's name was a lock I hadn't tried to open in 5 years. "Who is this?" "My name is Harlan Whitaker. I was I'm your mother's father. My grandfather. I had only the vaguest memories of him. A tall man at a holiday, maybe, when I was 6 or 7. My mother always spoke of him with a clipped, dismissive impatience. Difficult was the word she used. Impractical. A man who never understood what she and my father were trying to build. He was, she'd said, out of the picture. I see, I said, my voice flat. I doubt you do, he said. He didn't sound angry, just factual. I'm at Tybee Island. I own a small place on the water there. I would like you to come see me. This Saturday. Why? The question came out colder than I intended. There was a pause. I heard the faint sound of wind, or maybe the ocean. Because, he said, we have something to discuss. It concerns your mother, and it concerns your future. My blood went cold. Family wasn't a safety net. It was a bill. It was a demand. It was a wrong number text. I'm very busy, I said. I know, he replied, and for the first time, there was a trace of something else in his voice. Amusement. You're the woman who fixed the Salt and Vine delivery schedule. I own a small piece of their parent company. Your letter of thanks crossed my desk. I was silent. You're a systems analyst, Miss Scott, he continued. You see the patterns. I'm inviting you to look at a new one, a much older one. I looked at the chaos of the warehouse floor, the flow I had learned to read. He was right. This was an exception, an anomaly in the data. And the one thing I had learned, from the bus station to the loading dock, was that you never ignore an anomaly. You investigate it. Tybee Island, I said, pulling my graph paper notebook toward me. Saturday. What time? Tybee Island was not just a place. It was a different atmosphere. I drove my 10-year-old sedan over the causeway, leaving the industrial haze of Savannah's ports behind. The air became thick with salt and the sharp cry of gulls. Harlan Whitaker's villa was not a modern glass box. It was old, built to withstand hurricanes and time. It sat facing the ocean, a 2-story structure of yellowed plaster and a terracotta tile roof, the kind that looked like it had been baked by 100 years of sun, a wide, shaded porch wrapped around it. The moment I stepped out of my car, the smell hit me not just the ocean, but damp, old wood, and something sweet, like jasmine. It was the smell of history, of money so old it was no longer trying to impress anyone. He was waiting for me on the porch, sitting in a heavy teak chair. Harlan Whitaker was exactly as his voice had suggested, dry and strong. He was tall, even sitting, with a shock of white hair and hands knotted with arthritis. But they were large, capable hands. They looked like they had held tools, not just teacups. Miss Scott, he said, not standing. He gestated to the chair opposite him. You're punctual, a rare trait. I'm at my roots, I said, sitting down. The chair was heavy, solid. It didn't scrape or wobble. He smiled, a brief crinkling of the skin around his eyes. So I hear. Tea. He didn't wait for an answer. He poured from a simple ceramic pot into 2 matching cups. There was no sugar, no milk. He slid one across the table. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the rhythm of the surf. It was the opposite of the clanging, chaotic rhythm of Turnpike Ridge. This was a system, too, but it was natural, ancient, and self-correcting. You're wondering why I called you, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm wondering why you're my grandfather, I replied, and why it took 26 years for you to mention it. Fair. He took a sip of tea. Your mother, Valerie, is a woman who values order. She likes her ledgers to balance. She likes her life to be neat. I am not a neat entry. I am a loose end. So she tied me off. She said you were difficult, I recalled. I was, he agreed easily. I disagreed with her, vehemently. When she and your father decided to build their life in Des Moines, they had a vision. That vision was based on reputation, on social standing, on the appearance of success. I found it hollow. He looked out at the ocean. There was a disagreement. A matter of family finances. A long time ago. Your mother believed in protecting the family name. The order of things. I believed in justice. Even if it was messy, she chose order. She told me I was no longer welcome until I could respect the structure she was building. I told her I'd wait. You've been waiting a long time, I said. She hasn't changed, he said. But I've been watching. I watched when she sent you Tessa's birthday text. I watched when you took that job at the bus terminal. And I watched when you fixed the Salt and Vine logistics. You, it seems, did not inherit your mother's priorities. You inherited mine. You're a problem solver. You see the flow. He set his cup down and reached inside the house, beside his chair. He pulled out a large, heavy envelope. It wasn't a modern office envelope. It was thick, cream-colored, and sealed on the back with a circle of dark red wax, impressed with what looked like a family crest. My name, Kendall Scott, was written on the front in black, slashing ink. I don't know what's in this, I said, my voice guarded. You're not supposed to, he said. You are to keep this. Do not open it. In 3 weeks, it will be Thanksgiving. You will bring this envelope back here, to this house. You will meet with my lawyer, and you will open it then. I stared at the wax seal. This feels like a trap, or a test. It's neither, he said. It's a door. You've been trying to pick the lock on your future for 5 years. I'm just handing you a key. I bristled. The pride that had kept me alive in the garage apartment flared up. I don't need your money, Mr. Whitaker. I came here out of curiosity. But I'm not looking for a handout. I'm doing just fine. I need opportunity, not charity. His smile returned, wider this time. Good. That's the girl I was hoping for. But you're wrong about one thing. Opportunity, he said, tapping the table. Needs a door to walk through. A garage apartment with a cot is a fortress. It keeps you safe, but it also keeps you trapped. This, he gestured to the villa, the ocean, is a door. He'd done his research. How did you know about the cot? The same way I knew about Salt and Vine. I find that if you want to understand a system, you look at its origins. You started on a folding army cot. Correct? I thought of the metallic clack, the sound of being temporary. Yes. And where is it now? I allowed myself a small smile. I'm in the process of folding it up. Excellent, he said. He reached for a small notepad and wrote a name and a number. This is Jillian Rhodes. She's my attorney. She is not a relative. She is not a family friend. She is the executor of my estate and the sharpest legal mind in Savannah. I've already arranged her time. Thanksgiving Day, 11 a.m. Here. He pushed the paper toward me. Then, from his pocket, he produced a heavy brass key ring. There were at least 5 keys on it. He slid it across the table. What's this? The keys to the villa, he said, as if it were obvious. You're giving me the keys to your house. It's not my house. Not really. Read the envelope on Thanksgiving. These are for you. Move your things in. Tonight, if you like. I was stunned. This was happening too fast. My internal logistics map was spinning. I can't just move in. Why not? Your lease is month to month. I checked. Give your notice. The system you're in is inefficient. Upgrade. I picked up the keys. They were heavy. Old-fashioned skeleton keys mixed with modern deadbolts. The brass was warm from his pocket. There's one rule, he said, his voice dropping slightly. I figured. Do not change the locks. Not any of them. I know they're old. I know the salt air corrodes them. You'll be tempted to call a locksmith and make it secure. Don't. I looked at him. That's a strange rule. It's a necessary one. This house has a history. Kendall? And some people think a key is the same thing as a right. Just let them try. It's important that they try. I didn't understand, but I understood the conviction in his voice. All right, I won't change the locks. Good. He pushed himself up from the chair. A slow, stiff movement. Walk with me. The tide's turning. We walked down the wooden steps to the beach. The sand was white and packed firm. He walked slowly, but with a steady, determined pace. This place, he said, gesturing to the dunes. This was all marsh. My father and I, we built a small shipyard, just over that rise. Nothing fancy. We built shrimp boats, trawlers, good, honest work, steel and wood, things you could touch. He told me about his life. He'd built the business for 30 years. He'd seen the industry changing, seen the rise of fiberglass and cheap overseas labor. He saw the flow changing. Everyone called me a fool, he said. I was on the board of the local bank. I saw the numbers. The shipping boom was coming, but the boat-building boom was over. So, I sold my shares. I sold the yard to a competitor who wanted the land. I sold it at the perfect time. And my mother, Valerie, she hated it. She wanted to be the daughter of a shipyard president. She didn't want to be the daughter of a man who just managed investments. She thought I'd given up, that I'd embarrassed her. I could hear Valerie's voice in his description. Reputation, order. She and your father, he continued, they live their lives trying to prove to the world how much they're worth. They're obsessed with the ledger. They want everyone to see the final number, all zeros. He stopped and picked up a piece of driftwood, examining it. I'm going to give you one piece of advice. Kendall, you can have the house, you can have the opportunity, but you remember this, don't you ever get rich by proving other people are poor. It's the most useless, hollow kind of wealth there is. He tossed the wood into the surf. We walked back to the villa as the sun began to dip, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. The air was cooling. As I got to my car, he turned. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the tea, I said. He gave a dry chuckle, which turned into a cough. It was a sharp, shallow, rattling sound. It seized him for a moment, and he leaned against the porch railing. I took a step toward him. Are you all right? He waved me off, catching his breath. He pulled out a handkerchief and pressed it to his lips. Fine, fine, just the salt air. He folded the handkerchief quickly and put it away. I've got plenty more Thanksgivings to eat. Don't you worry. But I was worried. I was a systems analyst. I recognized a critical failure point when I saw one. Go on, he said, smiling weakly. You have packing to do. 11 a.m. Thanksgiving. Don't be late. And don't forget the envelope. I drove away from Tybee Island with a heavy, wax-sealed envelope on the passenger seat and a heavy ring of brass keys in my hand. That night, I sat in my small, beige apartment, the sounds of the city a distant siren. The traffic on the main road felt foreign. I looked at the cot, still folded in my closet, a symbol of my temporary, self-imposed exile. The wind howled outside my window, a low, mournful sound, different from the sharp, coastal wind at Tybee. I placed the keys on my small kitchen table. They made a loud, definitive clack. It was the same sound the cot used to make, but it wasn't a sound of ending. It wasn't about being temporary. It was the sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. It was the sound of a new life, a new system, ringing the doorbell and waiting for me to finally answer. I walked out of Turnpike Ridge on a Friday. My resignation was a single, typed page. I handed it to Raylan Cole, who was busy yelling at a driver about a lost manifest. He stopped, read the letter, and actually laughed. Atlas Nest Operations, he said, mispronouncing Atlas. You think because you fixed a donut run, you're a CEO. This is the real world. Scott, you'll be back in a month, asking for your scanner back. Thank you for the opportunity. Raylan, I said. I left the letter on his desk. Next to a stack of the exact manifests my macro had been designed to replace, I didn't look back. My New World headquarters was a 200-square-foot room above the Blue Thimble sewing machine repair shop. It cost $400 a month. Utilities included. The entryway smelled of machine oil and hot metal. The room itself was painted a pale, sickly yellow. Its only features were a warped floor, a single dusty window, and a ceiling fan that wobbled dangerously on its lowest setting, making a rhythmic click-clack, click-clack that was so familiar. It was almost comforting. I had moved into Harlan's villa, a place of quiet, echoing spaces, and the constant sound of the ocean. But I chose this room for my office. The villa was an opportunity, a door. This room was the workshop. I bought a 6-foot whiteboard, 2 folding tables, and a used office chair with 1 wobbly arm. For the first week, I just sat. I had the what, the logistics. I had the why Harlan's advice to build. Not to tear down. But I was missing the how. At Turnpike, I had been a solo operator. I read the flow. I drew the map. I wrote the code. But a company wasn't a cot. It couldn't be folded and unfolded by one person. A company was a system of people. My first hire was Miles O'Rourke. He was a data analyst I'd met at a local community college tech forum. He was 22, brilliant, and pathologically shy. He saw the world not in numbers, but in the shapes that numbers made. He agreed to work part-time, mostly from his own apartment. He was my data engine. My second hire was June Fair. June was in her late 50s, a former shift supervisor from a textile plant that had shut down. I'd met her while researching local suppliers and had been impressed by her quiet, unshakable authority. She didn't manage by yelling. She managed by teaching. She saw process where others saw chaos. She agreed to be my lead trainer. We sat in the hot yellow room, the click-clack of the fan punctuating the silence. I drew a circle on the whiteboard. "This is what everyone else sells," I said. "They come in, they point out what's broken, they sell you new software, and they leave. The system works for 6 months, and then it fails. Why? Because they never trained the people," June said, her arms crossed. "They train the manager, not the guy on the floor. The new software doesn't account for a sick day, or a humid day when the boxes stick." Exactly. I drew another circle. They're fixing the system, but they're ignoring the people. We're going to do the opposite. I wrote our value proposition on the board. We don't just fix systems, we build people, so the systems can stand on their own. Miles, who hadn't spoken yet, just nodded. The human element is the primary variable. Most analysts try to eliminate it. You're trying to optimize it. I'm trying to make it the point, I said. From this, our service package was born. I called it the 33300. 3 days of observation, I explained, tapping the board. We don't talk, we don't interfere, we just watch. We map the flow, the bus station phase. 30 days of intervention, I continued. We work with the crews on the floor. June and I, we're on the shift. We draw the cardboard maps. We find the bottlenecks, and we reroute the process, live. Miles provides the data to back up our instincts. And 300 days of support, I finished. Remote monitoring. Miles builds a simple dashboard for the client. We check in. We make sure the new system is sticking. We're not a bandage. We're physical therapy. Our first client was a small, artisanal candle-making workshop. The owner was drowning in her own success. Orders were up, but she couldn't ship them. The warehouse was a maze of wax, wicks, and glassware. We started our 3-day observation. I just watched. June, with her clipboard, timed the workers. Miles took their last 3 months of order slips and mapped them. On day 4, we met in the owner's office. Your problem isn't space, I said, pointing to Miles's chart. It's travel time. Your fastest moving product, the sea salt and cypress candle, is in the back corner. Your slowest, the holiday special, is blocking the shipping station. June stepped in. Your primary packer, Maria, walks an average of 7 miles a day, just inside this warehouse. She's spending 60% of her time walking and 40% packing. We didn't sell her a new shelving system. We spent the next 2 weeks reorganizing her existing one. We drew a new layout on the floor with bright yellow tape. We created a hot zone for the top 10 sellers, right by the packing station. We trained the crew not just to follow the map, but to update the map when a new product started trending. The result? A 22% reduction in pick and pack travel time. Maria went from shipping 40 boxes a day to 70. We had our first case study. Our second client was harder, Pecan Row. It was a beloved local bakery chain, expanding just like Salt and Vine, but they had a critical flaw. Their bread, their main draw, was inconsistent. "The yeast is dead on arrival," the owner told me, frantic. "Some days it's perfect, some days it's flat. My supplier swears it's fresh." This wasn't a layout problem. This was a supply chain failure. Miles dug into the invoices. June and I went to the bakery at 3 a.m. We saw it immediately. The supplier was delivering the fresh active yeast at 6 p.m., along with the flour and sugar. The bakery's night staff would sign for it and put it in the cooler. The bakers wouldn't touch it until the next morning. Almost 12 hours later, the yeast was active. All right, it was activating, and then dying. In the cooler, long before it ever saw flour. The supplier was telling the truth. The bakery was telling the truth. The system was the problem. I called the supplier. "You're running a separate cold chain truck for milk at 5 a.m., aren't you?" He was. "I want you to add one item to that truck," I said. "The yeast for pecan roe, and I want you to bill pecan roe for the H+6 delivery." "The what?" "H+6. The order is on demand. The bakers arrive at 4 a.m. They place the yeast order. Your 5 a.m. truck delivers it. They have it in their hands within 1 hour of starting their shift. It never sits in the cooler. It goes straight from your truck to their mixing bowl." It was a radical change. It required the supplier to adjust his truck packing system and the bakery to adjust its ordering process. June spent 2 weeks personally training the head baker and the supplier's driver, making sure the handoff was perfect. The inconsistency vanished. Pecan roe's bread was perfect, every day. Atlas Nest Operations now had 2 case studies, one internal fix, one external supply chain. The phone started to ring. A coffee roaster, a local textbook distributor, a small batch furniture maker. Miles went from part-time to full-time. June hired 2 assistant trainers. The tiny yellow office was now cramped, loud, and thrumming with energy. The click-clack of the ceiling fan was drowned out by the sound of 3 new whiteboards being wheeled into place. We were building something real. But as my company grew, the past began to pull. I was living at the villa, but I rarely saw it in daylight. I'd leave before dawn and come home long after sunset, the headlights of my car cutting through the dark. Quiet streets of Tybee. I'd walk in, exhausted, and the house would be silent, save for the rush of the ocean. It was a strange duality, the frantic, hands-on energy of Atlas Nest and the profound, lonely quiet of Harlan's home. I kept my promise. One night, after a brutal 14-hour day redesigning a loading dock, I came home and the front door key stuck. The salt air was doing its job. The brass was crusting over, and the deadbolt tumblers felt stiff, gritty. My first instinct, my job, was to fix it. I had my phone out, ready to Google 24-hour locksmith Tybee. Then I remembered Harlan's voice. "Don't change the locks. Let them try. It's important that they try." Who was they? I put the phone away. I jiggled the key, forced the deadbolt back, and stepped inside. I left the lock broken. It was the hardest thing I'd done all day. To consciously leave a system inefficient. It was an act of trust, and it made me deeply uncomfortable. I made tea and sat on the wide porch, looking at the black, invisible ocean. I was finally building a life that was stable, a life based on my own principles, a life where I was valued for my mind. I hadn't spoken to my family in 5 years. Since the wrong number text, the silence was a scar, but it was a clean one. Then my phone buzzed on the teak table. A new text, an unknown number from a Des Moines area code. My heart didn't just stop, it seized. I opened the message. It was not a greeting. It was not an apology. It was 7 words, cold and sharp as a knife. "What are you doing to him?" Him. Harlan. They knew. Somehow. The system I had left in Iowa had just collided with the system I was building in Georgia. I stared at the number. This was my mother, Valerie. After 5 years of silence, this was her first contact. Not "how are you?" Not "are you safe?" But an accusation, a demand. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it. I hit save contact. I thought about what to name it. Valerie felt wrong. Mother felt like a lie. I typed in the only word that felt true. The force that had defined my old life, the one I was always trying to escape, gravity. I saved the contact, put the phone down, and listened to the ocean. The tide was coming in. But I wasn't going to let it pull me under. The article in the Savannah Business Journal hit on a Tuesday. I had been hesitant to speak to the reporter, but June insisted. "They're not buying a spreadsheet. Kendall," she'd said. "They're buying your brain. Let them see it." The headline was larger than I expected. From Army Caught to Flow Expert. How one woman is untangling Savannah's supply chain. It was the caught detail that made it compelling. Apparently, it was the human interest hook. It transformed me from a consultant into a story. And stories attract attention. The phone in the little yellow office above the blue thimble began to ring. It didn't stop. Miles had to set up a digital queue just to filter the inquiries. We were suddenly terribly visible. The first shark in the water wasn't my family. It was Paxton Reed. His email arrived an hour after the article went live. Paxton Reed, Reed Capital Ventures. It was sleek, minimalist, and suggested a coffee meeting that very afternoon. I met him at a cafe downtown. He was everything Harlan was not. He was young, polished, and wore a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He had the unnerving smile of a man who had never been told no. "Kendall, great story," he said, not making eye contact, busy scrolling through his phone. "Love the narrative, love the hustle." "Mr. Reed, I'm not a narrative, I'm a service." Right. And that's the problem." He finally looked up. "Your service isn't scalable. You and your team, you're high touch. You're a bottleneck. You can't be in every warehouse, drawing on cardboard." "The high touch is the entire point," I said, my voice flat. "We train the people. People are costs," he said, with an easy, dismissive wave. "I read about your pecan row fix. Smart. But you know what's smarter? I give you $500,000. Seed capital. We automate. We license your system. We go to new clients, and we prove our value on day one. We mandate a 20% reduction in their floor staff. We cut the fat. That's a hard ROI. That's how you scale." I stared at him. He was Raylan Cole in a $1,000 suit. He was my father. He saw the world as a ledger, and people as the first expense to be cut. "Harlan Whitaker," I said quietly. "What?" "My grandfather. He told me, don't get rich by proving other people are poor. You're suggesting I build a company that does exactly that. My answer is no." I stood up. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. "You're still thinking like the girl on the cot. Kendall, you're making a mistake. Call me when you're ready to be a grown-up." I left him to pay for his own coffee. The article had other consequences. The visibility wasn't just commercial. It was personal. 2 days later, my phone vibrated. A call from Gravity. I let it go to voicemail. The message was chilling. It was Valerie's voice, crisp and cold, a sound I hadn't heard in 5 years. "Kendall, this is your mother. Your father and I have been informed by Harlan's old real estate broker that you are staying in his house on Tybee Island. This is highly irregular. We have decided to come to Savannah for Thanksgiving. We will be at the house, and we will discuss this." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. She was scheduling a disciplinary hearing. I was still staring at the phone when a text came through. A different Des Moines number. "Tessa. Hey, saw the article online. Pretty impressive. You're really doing it." I waited. I knew there was a but. Mom is really upset about the house. She's been on the phone all day. Just be careful. Kendall, you know how she is. She always wins. She always wins. I didn't reply. I put the phone on silent. The tension in my shoulders was so tight, it was hard to breathe. I was being squeezed from two sides, the corporate predator and the family one. In the middle of this, a lifeline, a different kind of email. It was from Jillian Rhodes, Harlan's attorney. It was brief, professional, and blessedly free of emotion. Ms. Scott, this is to confirm our appointment as per Mr. Whitaker's instructions. We will meet at the Tybee Villa on Thursday, November 27th. Thanksgiving Day at 12 o'clock noon precisely. You will be present for the unsealing and reading of a private trust instrument. Please bring the red wax-sealed envelope, unopened. Regards, J. Rhodes, 12 o'clock noon. My mother had scheduled her discussion. Harlan had scheduled his own. The two systems were on a collision course. Paxton Reed, true to his nature, didn't accept rejection. He saw it as a negotiation. A new email arrived. Subject: a better offer. It was a revised term sheet. More money. I was about to delete it. But Miles, my data analyst, stopped me. He'd been looking over my shoulder. "Kendall, wait," he said, his voice quiet. We were the only two left in the yellow office. The click-clack of the ceiling fan drilling into the silence. "Don't look at the number. Look at the appendix." He pointed to a clause buried deep in the legalese. Clause 12B. As a condition of diligence, Atlas Nest Operations will provide Reed Capital with full, unredacted, read-write access to all client operational data, historical invoices, and proprietary process maps. "It's a data trap," Miles whispered, his face pale. "He doesn't want to invest in us. He wants to gut us. He wants our case studies, our client lists. He wants to know how we fixed Pecan Row, so he can sell that solution to a national competitor. He's not trying to buy your company. Kendall, he's trying to steal your brain." I felt suddenly cold. This was a corporate version of the $50 bill, a transaction designed to leave me with nothing. I couldn't stay in the office. I drove to the villa, but the house felt too quiet, too formal. I walked straight past it, onto the beach. It must have been 3 in the morning. The sand was cold and damp under my bare feet. The ocean was a vast, roaring darkness. I thought about Paxton's email. I thought about Valerie's voicemail. "Give us the keys. Give us the data. Give us what is yours. Because we've decided you shouldn't have it." I sat on the sand, the wind pulling at my hair. I needed an anchor. I needed principles. I took out my phone, the screen a bright, painful square in the dark. I opened a new note. I wrote 5 sentences. 1. We build people, not just spreadsheets. 2. We do not get rich by proving other people are poor. 3. Our clients' data is their property, not our product. 4. We will never turn a human process into a PR gimmick. 5. The system must serve the people, not the other way around. I saved the note. I felt the cold in my bones, but my head was clear. I knew what I had to protect. My phone rang, making me jump. The screen lit up Harlan Whitaker. I answered, my voice rough. "You're up late." "Or early," he rasped. His voice was different. It was thin, watery. "Just checking on my investment. Thanksgiving is 2 days away. That villa has a proper wood-fired oven in the kitchen. Thing's a monster. Takes hours to get right. I need you to come early. Help an old man with the bird." I heard him cough. A deep rattling sound that didn't stop. It was the same cough from the porch, but it had teeth now. "Harlan, are you okay? You sound terrible." "Nonsense," he said, his voice straining. "Just a chill. Now, you be there." 11 a.m. Jillian arrives at noon. We'll have this all sorted. You, me, the lawyer, and a 20-pound turkey. He coughed again, a painful-sounding bark, and hung up before I could argue. He was lying. I knew it. My analyst brain, the part that recognized critical failure points, was screaming. An hour later, as the first gray light touched the ocean, my phone rang again. It was Jillian Rhodes. Her voice was sharp, awake, and laced with a concern that hadn't been there before. "Kendall, I'm glad I reached you. I'm at Savannah Memorial." I was already standing, grabbing my keys. "What happened?" "Harlan. He called an ambulance. He couldn't breathe. They've admitted him. It's pneumonia. Mild. They're saying, but he's weak." "I'm on my way," I said, running to my car. No, Jillian said, her voice firm. He was very clear. He made me promise. He said you'd try to come, and I was to forbid it. His exact words were, "Protect the house. The vultures will be circling." He said the plan is unchanged. You and I, at the villa, at noon on Thanksgiving, with or without him. He said, "It's more important now than ever." I stopped, my hand on the car door. Protect the house. He knew. He had anticipated all of this. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of high alert. I felt like a sentry on a castle wall. The media, spurred by the article, kept calling. A lifestyle magazine wanted to profile the home. We'd love to do a feature. The flow expert at home, that gorgeous villa, the history. It would be stunning for our holiday issue. No, I said. The word, a flat, hard stone. The house is a private residence. It's not for show. I was building fortifications. Then, the final salvo. Wednesday afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving, an email from Valerie. Subject Thanksgiving guest list. I opened it. It was a list of names. Valerie and Gregory Scott, Tessa Scott, Dr. S. and Mrs., Robert Arlen Des Moines, Mr. and Mrs., David Bishop Atlanta. Names I vaguely recognized. My parents' social circle. They're set. The body of the email was brief. Kendall, this is the final list of family attending tomorrow. Please ensure the house is prepared for our arrival at 10 a.m. We will need access to the guest rooms. We are bringing our own turkey, as I'm sure you haven't planned. V. My blood went cold. This wasn't a discussion. This was an occupation. She was bringing witnesses. She was staging a takeover. She was coming to show her friends the quaint house her difficult father owned, the house her wayward daughter was squatting in. She was coming to absorb my victory into her narrative. I stood on the porch, the wind whipping the salt spray into my face. I typed a reply on my phone. My fingers were perfectly steady. This is not your invitation to send. Harlan is in the hospital. The only scheduled event is a legal meeting at noon. These other people are not welcome. I hit send. The reply from Gravity was instant. We are the family. We will be there at 10. The battle lines were drawn. The system was about to be stress tested. The rain began at 10 a.m., a gray, slanting sheet of water that turned the ocean into a blurred watercolor of charcoal and foam. Thanksgiving. I had been up since 6, basting the 20-pound turkey Harlan had ordered. The wood-fired oven in the villa's kitchen, the one he'd been so excited about, was roaring. The house smelled of rosemary, thyme, and wood smoke, but it was a lonely smell. Jillian Rhodes arrived at 11:50 a.m., 10 minutes early. She was not dressed for a holiday. She wore a severe dark gray suit, her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She carried a leather briefcase in a small, hard-shell case. "Kendall," she said, shaking the rain from her umbrella, "is the reading room prepared?" "Yes." "Jillian, have you heard from the hospital?" "I spoke with his nurse this morning," she said, her voice all business. "He is stable. The pneumonia is responding to antibiotics, but he is weak, and they are keeping him isolated." She walked past me to the heavy oak table in the reading room. From the hard-shell case, she extracted a small professional-grade digital camera and a compact tripod. She placed it on the mantelpiece, aimed squarely at the table. "Harlan was explicit about this," she said, checking the lens. "A single, continuous, unedited recording for the archive." The doorbell rang at 11:55, 5 minutes early, a power play. I opened the door. They stood on the covered porch, framed by the driving rain. My mother, Valerie, was in the center, immaculate. Her cashmere coat was dry. She held a perfect, glistening pumpkin pie in a glass dish, as if it were an offering or a warrant. My father, Gregory, stood just behind her, his shoulders hunched, looking damp and miserable. Beside him, Tessa stared at her shoes, her hair plastered to her cheeks. "Kendall," Valerie said. Her voice was bright, brittle, and loud enough to fill the entryway. She swept past me, not waiting for an invitation. Her eyes were not on me. They were scanning, appraising. "You've let the salt air tarnish the hinges on this door. It's disgraceful." She marched into the reading room, spotted Jillian, and her smile tightened. "Ah, the lawyer. You're here as well. Good. We need a witness." She placed the pie on the sideboard, a conquering flag. "Gregory, Tessa, come in. Don't drip on the floor." My father and sister shuffled in, leaving puddles by the mat. "Mrs. Scott, Mr. Scott, Miss Scott," Jillian said, not offering to shake hands. "Please, take a seat. We are scheduled to begin at noon." "We're here for Thanksgiving, Jillian," Valerie said, already taking charge, walking the perimeter of the room, running a finger along a bookshelf. "We're here to see Harlan. This arrangement Kendall has imposed is simply not acceptable. As soon as Harlan is home, we'll be moving him to a proper facility in Des Moines, near family." The grandfather clock in the hall began to chime. 12 heavy, sonorous bongs. Jillian Rhodes waited for the last chime to fade. She stood at the head of the table, next to the whirring camera. "This meeting is now in session," she said, her voice cutting through the humidity. "Mr. Whitaker is not present, but he left explicit instructions." She placed her briefcase on the table and snapped it open. From it, she removed the heavy cream-colored envelope. I walked forward and placed my identical, unopened envelope beside it. My family watched. Valerie with impatience, Gregory with anxiety. Jillian picked up Harlan's envelope. She used a slim silver letter opener to slit the red wax seal. The paper was thick, heavy. She unfolded it. "I am here today," she began, her voice formal, "to unseal and read a private directive pertaining to the Whitaker-Mercer Trust." Valerie scoffed. "The Mercer Trust. That is my mother's trust. Harlan is merely the administrator. It passes to me. This is all very dramatic, but unnecessary." "Mr. Whitaker restructured the trust 4 months ago," Jillian said, her eyes fixed on the document. "This directive is legal, binding, and notarized. I will read it now." The room was silent, save for the camera's faint hum and the slashing rain against the windows. "Item 1, Jillian read. "The property, real and material, located at 1 Lighthouse Road, Tybee Island, is designated as a lifetime gift to my granddaughter, Kendall Scott. This gift is made in recognition of her resilience, her integrity, and her possessing the Whitaker spirit, which her mother misplaced. Effective immediately, Kendall Scott is the sole beneficiary and designated resident of this property. All taxes, maintenance, and upkeep are to be paid in perpetuity by the trust." Gregory made a sound, a sharp intake of breath. Like he'd been punched, Valerie's face went blank. "A gift. He cannot give away a family asset. That house is worth millions. It's community property." "It was not," Jillian said. "Harlan purchased it using his own funds, predating his marriage. It was always his to assign. Which brings me to item 2, the key clause." My stomach tightened. Harlan's strange instruction, "Don't change the locks." "The key clause," Jillian read, "stipulates that the physical locks and security systems of the property are legally bound to this directive. The only keys, fobs, or access codes legally recognized for entry belong to the sole beneficiary, Kendall Scott, as registered and verified by my office. Any and all previously existing keys, copies, or duplicates, specifically any held by Valerie Scott, Gregory Scott, or Tessa Scott, are hereby rendered null, void, and legally defined as instruments of trespass." "Trespass," Gregory burst out, his face turning a blotchy, mottled red. "We have keys. We've always had keys. This is our family home." "It is not," Jillian stated, which brings us to item 3, the covenant of entry and punitive liquidation. Valerie, who had been frozen, turned. "The what?" "The covenant of entry," Jillian read, her voice cold and precise as the letter opener. Should any party, related or otherwise, attempt to bypass the beneficiary's authority, this includes, but is not limited to, the use of a voided key, hiring a locksmith, attempting to change the locks, coercion, or any form of forced entry. That action will constitute a breach of covenant. Jillian paused, took a breath, and looked directly at my mother. Upon confirmation of such a breach by my office, the trust is authorized and directed to immediately trigger a punitive liquidation. Specifically, the sum of $150,000 will be sold from the Valerie Scott Legacy Portfolio, the portfolio established by Mr. Whitaker, for your benefit, Mrs. Scott. The proceeds of that sale will be transferred immediately and irrevocably to the Harlan Whitaker Vocational Fund, a new endowment providing scholarships for logistics and trade skills programs in the state of Georgia. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. The smell of the roasting turkey suddenly seemed grotesque, thick and heavy. My father was no longer red. He was as pale as the pie crust. He looked like he was going to be sick. Valerie was perfectly still. For a full 10 seconds, she did not move. Then, she let out a short, sharp laugh. It was the ugliest sound I had ever heard. "This is absurd," she said, her voice shaking with a rage she was trying to disguise as amusement. "Jillian, this is elder abuse. Harlan is ill. He's been manipulated. You know this won't hold up. We are family." Jillian Rhodes did not smile. She held up the document, showing the signature, the notary's stamp. "And this," she said, "is legal. This is the system Harlan put in place to protect his property and his beneficiary. I am simply the administrator. The trust is ironclad." The tension snapped. Tessa, who had been cringing since we sat down, finally spoke. Her voice was a desperate whisper. "Kendall, he's trying to make us enemies. Can't you see? Don't let him. I didn't know about any of this. I need a chance. I'm not like them." I looked at my sister, the girl who got the checks, the praise, the birthday parties, the girl who had watched them hand me $50 and show me the door. "Everyone needs a chance. Tessa," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. "The only question is who has to pay for it. I'm done paying for yours." Before she could answer, before my mother could explode, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It was a long, insistent, confident buzz. We all startled. Jillian, her face a mask of annoyance at the interruption, strode to the door and pulled it open. Paxton Reed stood on the porch. He was holding a ridiculously large bouquet of white lilies, flowers for a funeral, and grinning his bright, predatory smile. "Kendall," he boomed, loud enough for the entire room to hear. He saw my family sitting there, saw the lawyer, and his eyes lit up, sensing leverage. "I was in the neighborhood. Just wanted to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. We really need to talk about that term sheet. I think you're making a big mistake." He tried to step inside, into the room, into the conflict. Jillian Rhodes put a hand on his chest, physically barring his entry. "Sir, this is a private legal meeting," she said, her voice dropping to a register that could have frozen steam. "Oh, come on," he laughed, trying to charm her. "I'm just a friend of the family, a business partner. Really. Kendall and I are working on some very exciting things, aren't we? Kendall?" He was performing for my mother, showing his connection to me, to the villa. "You are trespassing," Jillian said. "Leave the property now, or I will call the Tybee police and have you removed." Paxton's smile vanished. He realized his charm wasn't working. He looked past Jillian, his eyes darting, analyzing. He saw Valerie's face, tight with rage. He saw Gregory, pale and sweating. He saw me, standing by the fireplace, watching him. "Fine," he snapped. "Tough crowd." He took one step back. Then, in a movement so fast I almost missed it, he lifted his smartphone. He didn't aim it at me. He aimed it to capture the whole scene. Valerie, red-faced and furious. My father, looking broken. And me, standing across from the lawyer. The click of the digital shutter was barely audible. "Have your lawyer call my lawyer," he sneered. He turned, dropped the funereal lilies on the doormat, and walked back into the rain. Jillian closed the door. The thud echoed in the room. The spell was broken. Valerie stood up. The pie she had brought sat on the sideboard, a symbol of her failed invasion. "Well," she said, her voice a low tremble. "This has been clarifying. I see my father is sicker than I thought. Gregory, Tessa, we are leaving." My father scrambled to his feet, knocking his chair. Tessa followed, her eyes on the floor. Valerie walked to the sideboard, picked up her pie, and marched to the door. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look at me. The door slammed shut. I was alone. The only sounds were the whir of Jillian's camera, the drumming of the rain, and the timer on the oven. Letting out a faint ding, the turkey was ready. I walked into the kitchen, the smell of rosemary, thyme, and roasted meat. The smell of Thanksgiving filled my lungs. It was thick, rich, and suddenly, completely nauseating. Jillian was packing her briefcase, switching off the camera. "The recording is secure," she said. "I will file copies with the court and the trust. Kendall, I'm sorry." I nodded. I couldn't speak. She left. I stood in the silent, empty villa. The table was set for a meal that would never happen. The smell of the roasting bird, a feast Harlan had planned for us, mixed with the damp, woolly scent of my family's wet coats and the sharp, metallic smell of the rain. I opened the oven, the heat blasting my face. The turkey was beautiful, golden brown, perfect. I looked at it, and I felt nothing. No hunger, no triumph, just a profound, echoing cold. I couldn't eat. I wouldn't eat. The meal was spoiled. The holiday was just a stack of wet, ruined paper. The house was silent when I woke. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a sky the color of a fresh bruise, and the smell of the ruined turkey was still thick in the air. I had spent the night on the sofa in the reading room, the red wax seal of my envelope sitting on the table like a drop of blood. I went to the front door to get the paper. I put my key, Harlan's heavy brass key, into the lock. It stopped. It didn't just stick. The way it had before, it stopped hard, a solid, metallic thud. It went in perhaps half an inch and met a wall of new, unfamiliar tumblers. I stood there for a full minute, the key in my hand, the cold air washing over my bare feet. He had done it. My father, Gregory, the man who couldn't even meet my eye, had done it. I didn't try the key again. I walked to the porch camera, the small, discreet dome Harlan had installed. I pulled the footage on my phone. There it was, 6:05 a.m., just after sunrise, a white van with Savannah lock key on the side. My father, Gregory, standing on the porch, his shoulders hitched up in his damp coat, pointing at the door. He was talking to the locksmith, handing him a credit card. He looked like a man taking out the trash, trying to get it over with. The locksmith, in his bright green rain jacket, got to work. The entire transaction took less than 10 minutes. I watched the footage twice. My hand was not shaking. I felt a profound, Arctic cold. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This was a calculated breach of a legal boundary. This was trespass. My first call was not to the police. It was to Jillian Rhodes. She picked up on the second ring. "Jillian, this is Kendall. He did it." "He did what?" she asked, her voice instantly sharp. "Gregory. He changed the locks. I have the video. A locksmith. 6:05 this morning." For a moment, there was only silence on the line. I heard the sharp click of her keyboard. When she spoke again, her voice was not the voice of a lawyer. It was the voice of a weapon. "He triggered it," she said. "The fool. He actually triggered it." "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "I execute the directive. I am filing the emergency breach of trust notice with the court. Attaching your video file as Exhibit A, I am simultaneously filing the punitive liquidation order. Before the market opens tomorrow, that $150,000 will be moving. I am also calling the Tybee police to file a report for unlawful entry and property damage on behalf of the trust. Do not, under any circumstances, leave the house. She hung up. The system Harlan had built, the one they thought was a bluff, was activating. The second wave of the attack began an hour later. It came not from the door, but from the ether. My phone lit up with notifications. My mother, Valerie, had gone public. She had posted a photo on her Facebook page. It was an old one, from a Christmas perhaps 10 years ago. Me, awkward and small, standing next to a smiling, vibrant Harlan. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive warfare. With a heavy heart, our family asks for your prayers. Our beloved father, Harlan, is in the hospital. We are deeply concerned that in his vulnerable state, he is being unduly influenced by my daughter, Kendall. She has unfortunately been struggling with some issues for years and has now taken possession of his home, barring the family from entry during this critical time. We are only trying to protect him. Please pray that Kendall finds peace and allows her family to help her. It was brilliant. In one post, she had painted me as an ungrateful, unstable, borderline abusive monster. She was the concerned mother. I was the problem. The post exploded. It was shared by her friends, their friends, people from Des Moines, people in Atlanta. The comments were a torrent of bile aimed at me. Ungrateful. What kind of daughter does this? Praying for you, Valerie. That poor man. The third wave hit my company. The Atlas Nest email server, usually quiet, began to fill. Boycott Atlas Nest operations. Shame on your CEO. We will never hire a company run by someone who abuses the elderly. They were anonymous, mostly, but they were coordinated. Miles, my data analyst, was already at work. He sent me a message at 10 a.m. Kendall, this isn't a random protest. The emails are coming from throwaway accounts, but the IP addresses are being routed through a single, private proxy server. I traced the server lease. It's registered to a holding company owned by Reed Capital Ventures. Paxton Reed. He and my mother were working in tandem. She was attacking my character. He was attacking my livelihood. They were trying to break my system from the outside in. I sat in Harlan's reading room. The house was no longer a home. It was a fortress under siege. I could hear them. The army my mother had summoned. A car slowed down out front. Someone took a picture of the villa. I could post a defense. I could tell my side of the story. I could scream about the $50, the years of neglect, the lies, but I was a systems analyst. I didn't fight narrative with narrative. I fought it with data. I logged into the Atlas Nest website. I wrote a new post, not on my personal page, but on the company blog. I did not mention my mother. I did not mention my family. The title was A Statement on Property and Principles. I uploaded a single, redacted PDF. It was the summary of the Whitaker-Mercer Trust. I blacked out the monetary figures, but I left the core language intact. I posted the full legal text of the key clause. I posted the full legal text of the covenant of entry. I posted the full legal text of the punitive liquidation clause. I did not add any emotional commentary. I just let the cold, hard legal facts sit there. At the very bottom, I added a single line. Home is a place where you do not need a password to be loved. A house is a different system entirely. At Atlas Nest, we believe in transparent systems. I hit publish. The police arrived at 11 a.m., 2 officers, looking grim and uncomfortable. Jillian had clearly briefed them. I showed them the video, showed them my key failing in the lock. They confirmed the deadbolt was new. The door jamb splintered from the fast, sloppy work. While they were there, the locksmith's van returned. He had been summoned by the police. He was terrified. He told me it was his house, the locksmith stammered, looking at me. The old guy's son-in-law said his wife, Valerie, lost her key and that the daughter staying here was not well. He said it was a safety issue. He paid in cash, said to keep the receipt vague. The officers took his statement. A report was filed. Unlawful entry, criminal tampering. The locksmith, realizing he'd been used and was now an accomplice to a crime, looked at me with panicked eyes. I can have this old lock back on in 20 minutes. Ma'am, no charge. Thank you, I said. Please do. The second he finished, the gates of the villa hissed open again, a black Mercedes, a rental, my mother. She got out of the car, my father in the passenger seat, refusing to move. Valerie marched up the walk, her face a mask of iron fury. The police car was still in the driveway. She ignored it. What is the meaning of this? She hissed, stopping 10 feet from me. Calling the police on your father. He broke the law, I said. He was securing the house for Harlan. This is a safety issue. What if there's a fire? What if Harlan needs to get home? I am his daughter. I demand a spare key. She was still playing the part. The concerned mother, I looked at her, at the woman who had kicked me out with $50, at the woman who had just sicked the entire internet on me. You're right, I said. Let's discuss the safety clauses. I held the door open. She, thinking she had won, strode inside. I didn't lead her to the kitchen. I led her to the reading room. I pointed to the copy of the trust document still on the table. You seem to have forgotten this part, I said. The punitive liquidation clause, the one you and Gregory triggered at 6:05 this morning, Jillian already filed. The sale of $150,000 of your legacy portfolio is in process. Congratulations. Valerie, your tantrum just funded a trade school. Her face went from red to a waxy, bloodless white. The performance fell away. She wasn't a concerned mother. She was a woman who had just been handed a massive bill. You wouldn't, she whispered. I didn't, I said. Harlan did. And you and Gregory executed the transaction. Now please, leave my property. She stumbled back. But Tessa was suddenly there, pushing past her, her face blotchy and streaked with tears. The tears were real, but they weren't for me. Kendall, please, she cried. You don't understand my job. They're downsizing. I'm on the list. I have nothing. I came here thinking. I thought maybe Harlan could help. Mom said this house was for all of us. Please, I'm your sister. She was sobbing. It was the same leverage, just in a different flavor. My mother used anger. Tessa used weakness. I looked at her, the sister who had silently watched me pack my bags. I didn't feel pity. I just felt tired. I reached into my bag, pulled out my wallet, and extracted a single, crisp business card. Atlas Nest Operations, Kendall Scott, founder CEO. I held it out to her. She stopped crying, confused. What's this? It's a business card, I said, my voice flat. If you are looking for a job, we have an intake portal on our website. You can submit your resume like everyone else. June Fair handles the hiring. If you're qualified, she'll call you. Tessa stared at the card, then at me, her face twisting in disbelief. She had been begging for a handout, a family favor. I had given her a process. She didn't take the card. I let it fall to the floor between us. The media war, however, was far from over. Paxton Reed, having seen my post about the trust, escalated. He couldn't attack my family status, so he attacked my company's integrity. A new article popped up on a local business blog, quoting an anonymous source close to Reed Capital. Atlas Nest's secret sauce might be more sinister. It read, sources allege the firm is data scraping its clients, selling proprietary logistics solutions from one client to another without their knowledge. She's selling their data, the source said. That's how she's growing so fast. This was a kill shot. It hit my third principle. Our client's data is their property. My phone rang. It was June Fair. She sounded furious. I just saw the Reed blog, she snapped. That little parasite. Kendall, you're not to respond. June, he's accusing us of fraud. I know what he's doing, and I'm handling it. She hung up. 20 minutes later, a new post appeared on the Atlas Nest blog. It was written and signed by June Fair, Chief Operations Manager. It was titled, A Public Audit, Zero Exceptions. June, in her infinite, brutal efficiency, had not written a denial. She had published our internal data security audit from the last quarter. She posted the server access logs, showing 0 unauthorized breaches. She posted the client contract template, highlighting the clause that explicitly stated all proprietary data remained the client's property. She posted the raw, anonymized metrics showing that our process improvements were unique to each client's workflow. It was a systematic, data-driven annihilation of Paxton's rumor, and then, the final, unexpected variable entered the system, the human element. The comments on the Business Journal article, on my mother's post, had been a sewer. But now, comments started appearing on the Atlas Nest posts. The first one was from the owner of Pecan Row Bakery. "I don't know anything about a family dispute," he wrote. "I know that Kendall Scott and June Fair saved my bakery. They didn't sell my data. They redesigned my yeast supply chain at 4 in the morning and refused to send me a full invoice until my bread was perfect for 30 straight days. The anonymous source is a liar. Pecan Row stands with Atlas Nest." An hour later, the owner of the candle workshop posted, "Our proprietary data. She redesigned our packing floor with yellow tape and a Sharpie. She saved us 7 miles of walking a day. She's the real deal." The coffee roaster, the furniture maker, the textbook distributor. One by one, the clients I had worked with, the people whose systems I had helped build, began to speak. They weren't just clients. They were my witnesses. The narrative my mother and Paxton had tried to build of an unstable, unethical fraud was collapsing under the weight of actual, verifiable data. My system, the one built on principles and people, was holding. The siege had lifted. The immediate battle was over. The police were gone. The lock was restored. My clients had formed a firewall, and my mother's digital army was in retreat, their accusations dissolving against the hard data of my clients' loyalty. But the quiet that settled over the villa was heavy. It was the quiet of an unsolved equation. Harlan's voice echoed in my head. A loop of code I hadn't cracked. Don't change the locks. Let them try. It wasn't just a prediction. It was an instruction. He had built a system that required their breach. The punitive clause, the $150,000, was the effect. Gregory's call to the locksmith was the cause. But why was Harlan so certain they would attack the locks? It implied a history. It implied this wasn't the first time they had tried to force an entry. I had been looking at the external cameras, the ones covering the present. I needed to look at the internal ones, the ones covering the past. I went to the basement. It wasn't a wine cellar or a finished game room. It was a foundation, smelling of damp stone, salt, and cold, functional concrete. This was the part of the house that held everything up, the part nobody was ever meant to see. In the corner, next to the water heater, was a heavy metal utility shelf. On it sat an old, dusty, black box security DVR, a model from at least 10 years ago. It was separate from the modern system that monitored the porch. The monitor flickered on. It had only 2 feeds, one grainy, wide-angle shot of the basement itself, and one aimed at the heavy iron door leading to the wine cellar. I didn't search for footage from this morning. I spooled it back. Weeks, months. I was looking for the last time Harlan had been down here. Before the hospital. I found it, 3 weeks ago. The day before he'd called me. I watched him. He moved with a stiff, pained deliberation. He wasn't looking at the cameras. He was looking at the wall. He walked over to a section of the old ballast stone foundation, near the wine cellar door. He ran his hand along the mortar, his fingers seeming to count the stones. He stopped, pressed one, and then moved on. It was a marker. I went to the wall. It was dark, and the stones looked identical. I felt them, just as he had. 1, 2, 3. There, a line of mortar that felt different. It was newer, slightly sandy. I pressed it. The mortar was loose. I pulled, and a small wedge of it came out in my hand. Behind it was a dark, square void. My heart was hammering. I reached inside. My fingers brushed against cold, oiled metal. A ring. I pulled. A heavy iron plate, disguised as a stone, shifted and came loose. Behind it, set deep into the foundation, was a black, fireproof safe. It wasn't a digital keypad, it was an old, heavy tumbler lock, and hanging on a hook, right beside the DVR, labeled with a faded tag, was the key. He had left me a map. I had just passed the test. I opened the safe. The hinges groaned, a sound that hadn't been heard in years. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry, just two items, a thick, black leather-bound notebook, and a single, titanium-cased USB drive. I took them upstairs to the reading room. I opened the notebook. It was Harlan. His strong, slashing ink filled the pages. But it wasn't a diary. It was a ledger, a log file of every interaction. Nora Pike would have called it a masterpiece. He had recorded everything. March 10th, 2004. Meeting with V and G. Scott, V, requested full power of attorney, citing concerns over my cognitive state after I sold the last of the shipyard assets. Gregory seconded, suggested I was too sentimental to manage the Mercer portfolio. Witness R, Arlen, request formally denied. August 5th, 2006, V, presented documents to merge the Whitaker Mercer Trust into the Scott Family Holdings entity. My signature was required. I pointed out this would make Gregory the primary administrator. V claimed it was a tax efficiency. Witness G, Scott, denied. February 12, 2010, V and G presented a medical proxy document buried in the text. Clause 4 was language granting them full, immediate control of all assets upon physician's recommendation. The physician they had chosen was Gregory's brother. Witness Jillian Rhodes, pre-retainer. Consulting. Denied. Page after page. It was a 20-year history of their attempts to seize his assets. A systematic, relentless campaign. My father wasn't a bystander. He was the witness. He was the accomplice. The lockpicking wasn't a sudden, desperate act. It was the final, clumsy move in a 2-decade-long siege. I picked up the USB drive and plugged it into my laptop. It contained one video file. I clicked play. The video was shaky, clearly filmed from a phone in a breast pocket. The date stamp was from 6 years ago. My mother, Valerie, she looked younger, sharper. She was at an outdoor cafe, clinking a wine glass with a man in a slick, expensive suit. I recognized him. He was the real estate broker who had, just weeks ago, informed my parents. I was living in the villa. He's simply impossible, Daniel, Valerie said, her voice the same bright, brittle tone she'd used at Thanksgiving. He's letting her stay there. The girl, Kendall, the broker, Daniel, swirled his wine. It's his asset to assign, Valerie. For now. What's the harm? She's just a girl. Valerie let out that short, sharp laugh. The sound scraped my nerves. She's not just a girl, Valerie said, leaning in. She's a lesson. He thinks he's saving her, but he's just proving my point. She has no idea what she's walked into. Don't worry about Kendall. She'll soon understand what it means to be a Mercer. We'll have her out in a month. This house belongs to me. I closed the laptop. My hands were perfectly still. This was premeditated. The $50 wasn't an impulse. It was a pattern. They hadn't just kicked me out. They had disposed of me. My phone rang. Jillian. They're moving, she said. Her voice clipped. Valerie's attorneys filed an emergency motion an hour ago. They are petitioning the court for a temporary freeze on the trust and demanding an immediate competency hearing for Harlan. They are citing the punitive clause as proof of delirium and vindictive intent. So they trigger the clause, I said, and then claim he was insane for writing it. Precisely. It's a classic maneuver. But they've just filed. They have no idea what we have. I have something, I said. Something better than the porch video. I sent her the scanned pages from the logbook and the video file. The silence on her end was profound. I heard her keyboard clack, clack, clacking. My God, she whispered. This isn't a competency hearing. This is a pattern of attempted elder financial abuse. This notebook. Harlan had the entries notarized. They're witness stamped. What do we do? What do you want to do? Kendall, Jillian asked. I can have this video on every news blog in Savannah in 10 minutes. It would end your mother's social media campaign permanently. It would destroy her reputation. I thought about it. I thought about the humiliation of my mother's post. I thought about the $50 bill. I thought about proving to the world that she was the monster. And then I heard Harlan's voice. Don't you ever get rich by proving other people are poor. No, I said, my voice firm. No leaks, no social media. We don't fight a PR war. We fight a legal one. This is for the court. This is for the judge. We keep the system clean.